Fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
If the thought has crossed your mind, just test it out to see what would happen if you say yes.
Hey you! Yes, you! Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey, any youngers, what's going on? Happy December to you. I can't believe that month is coming out of me, but we are in December. The countdown begins for the end of the year, but there is really no need to panic because whether it's the end of the year, the start of a new one, the beginning of a month, just like it is right now, you're always going to face this feeling of letting things go and moving forward, and that battle, that consistent friction between the two things. And that's a huge message that I think will come across to you in today's episode. We have an amazingly fascinating guest on the show today. Her name is Kellyn Betchtold, and a couple of cool things about Kellyn is that she is the founder of The Self Coach, where she helps people deal with different career transitions and life transitions because that is what she is an expert in. Some crazy things that have happened to her in life. She got married, and 6 months later, she realized that was not the person or the life she was meant to live, and she got divorced. She's moved to an array of new cities. She's currently in the process of packing her life up and moving to Thailand. She's changed industries with her job. She's had to make new friendships all over the world. And maybe the coolest thing about Kellyn is that she once spent a summer on an island in Fiji with 19 strangers to compete for $1 million on a show you might have heard of or seen a couple times in your life, Survivor. It was crazy because when I was asking her about that experience on the show, she mentioned that it taught her one really important thing, and this is not a thing I would ever guess that you would learn on a show like Survivor. But she mentioned that it taught her the root meaning to the word happiness. Yes, happiness. Like, would you ever think that having to be on a show like Survivor where you're eating bugs and you're like dirty and all these things would teach you happiness? I questioned that answer like crazy in this episode. So as you kick off a new month, that is the last month of a year, of a decade, I want you to take those deep breaths and realize that no matter what life throws you and when it throws you, those things, you always have the tools you need to keep forward. And a Kellyn story today really drives that home for you. So I truly hope that you enjoy this episode. And as usual, come hang out with us in the You're Not Getting Any Younger secret Facebook group. We're like 2 people away from reaching 1,400 people. Oh my God. Come be those final 2. That was my goal of the year, is to get to 1,400 people. And we are so close. Help me make that goal come true. And as you're listening, if you love this episode, you love this podcast, A, that means the world to me. And B, if you can just scroll down on your phone, leave us a review. That also helps the show continuously grow and book amazing guests like Kellyn. And also, as you're listening, if there's a quote you like from the show or you just like this episode so freaking much, feel free to screenshot it, post it on the IG story, tag me at Jen Glantz, tag any younger at any younger, send me a DM. I'm always here for you. All right, let's dive in and listen to Kellyn's story. Let's jump right in. Okay, this first question, it could be a little bit hard, but how would you describe who you are and what you do to somebody you just met at a party?
Oh, I love that question. So I meet someone at a party. I usually say, "Hi, my name is Kellyn," like Kelly with an N, because my name trips everyone up. So I start there. And then what I say next is, I'm someone who is always um, looking to make sure I'm waking up every morning excited for the day. And I don't want to be someone who lives in the misery of monotony. Not that routines can't be great, but I'm always looking for the opportunity to make sure I wake up and I'm excited for what's ahead of me that day. And when I interact with other people, I want to add excitement and joy to their lives as well.
I love that. And were you always the kind of person who enjoyed a little bit of a unique kind of lifestyle of the unknowns, or is this something that you've adopted as you've grown up in life?
I definitely have adopted this lifestyle. I grew up on a small farm in the middle of Indiana, and all of my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings all still really live in that area to this day. So I love my community and I'm so thankful where I grew up. But everyone I grew up with, has the same jobs, prays to the same God, has the same routines and that sort of thing. And I didn't really kind of shift to being I say like a farm girl with big city adventure dreams until I went to college. I did go in Indiana, so not super far away from home. But after that, I moved to Chicago. And I did the whole thing of meeting a guy and was together for 6 years. We moved in together. So then, of course, you get married and kind of on that traditional track. And I went through with all of it and I was on my honeymoon in Iceland, which I always say, like, if you're on your honeymoon in Iceland and you're freezing cold, like maybe something has gone wrong here. Like, I think most people picture like frozen cocktails, pina coladas, and beaches. Iceland is lovely, but in that moment, I just thought, what have I done? This isn't what I've wanted to do. This is what I felt like I should do. And I get back from that and kind of pretty quickly reverse getting out of my marriage. And I had some lovely support system to help me through. And lo and behold, kind of skip a few really, really tough steps, graduate with an MBA, a master's in public health, and then get onto reality television. And that experience really kind of blew up my entire expectation of convention. And I would say that's when I really put the stake in the ground of, I'm going to live my life different.
Okay, your story has so many incredible pieces, and I want to touch on all of them. But really, one of the things you said just made my heart race. I mean, you said you had that moment in life where you're looking around and it happened to be on your honeymoon, which is, by the way, Iceland is like such a metaphor for how this relationship is going to go, you know? Um, but you're
Exactly.
there and you're looking at yourself and you're like, what have I done? And everyone listening has maybe had a moment in life where they're like, where am I? Or who have I become? Or what is going on with this life? Like, this was not what I thought would happen. So, that is a huge moment. And sometimes people take a moment like that and they ride it out for years. So, how did you go from that moment to saying, you know what? I'm going to pause this life and I'm going to fix it?
Yeah, what a scary moment that was for me. I've had it in small examples of like, oh, should I take this job and should I take this promotion or those sorts of things. But on the grand scale of the sinking feeling of something's wrong and I'm going to have to make some pretty big moves to fix it. I think when I look back, as I was navigating, it wasn't clear and easy, but I think what I did was I started to really focus on every time I had a fear of what would come next if I blew up my life. I tried to think about the dreams that I had. So I would really try to focus and I wrote things down. Like, I see myself as someone who has a lot of freedom and who lives with someone who's super kind. I see myself as somebody who gets to go on an adventure and doesn't just stay in one city for the rest of my life. I'm excited to explore these cities. And then the fears of, oh my gosh, what will people think of me if I get divorced? Or are my parents going to hate me? They just helped me with this huge wedding. Am I going to be alone for forever? Right? All these fears that we have. I tried to write those down as well. But ultimately, on the page, my dreams were shinier than the fears. And that just seeing it in front of me really helped me quell some of the fears. I also found other people who had gone through similar situations. So one really dear friend at the time was going through a divorce herself, and I just asked her, "How did you have the courage to do this?" And she just seemed so much happier and so much more herself. So I think, in short, meditate or spend time thinking, really write stuff down so you can see the words reflecting back at you on the page. It helps you see your own truth, and then find people who are living lives that you want to also live and ask them for their experience.
I really love that. And I'm so curious, like how did you figure out these things that you wanted for yourself? I know that sometimes we're scared to admit it or we dream really small. So how were you able to look at that paper and write down these huge things that you just knew in your core you wanted?
I told myself I could throw the sheet of paper away or burn it if I needed to. So when I was dreaming, I would just say, like, you can write all this stuff down, and if you don't have to tell anybody. So it's okay if you write down, like, I want to be the next Elizabeth Gilbert, which is like something I can't be the next Elizabeth Gilbert, but I want to be a woman who shares her truth. And I hope that other women can relate to that. So I think I did it in this way at first of very protecting myself. My career coach just told me the other day, like, I have a new dream, which I can talk about in a bit, but your new dream, it's a little puppy. It's a little baby dream. You don't have to share it with everyone right now. And so I think you work through the dreaming is and not giving yourself boundaries is you can keep them to yourself for a while. You don't have to post on Twitter, I'm going to write a book. you know, Somebody get ready, put it in your cart to buy next year. You can really just test out those dreams on yourself. And as you write things down and then go back and read them, it will just feel closer and closer to your heart. And I think, as cheesy as it sounds, we are in front of computers and all of that stuff, texting all the time. Having a journal and writing things down is really, really helpful. You can see what you connect with.
Okay, I seriously love that you said A, you can throw the paper out, and B, you could like burn it. I love that. And you're so right. Like you could write this paper and hide it under your bed. No one ever has to see it. You don't have to print a t-shirt with it. So I really love that. I guess this question is a little bit personal because sometimes when I look at myself in moments and I think like, holy shit, Jen, how did you become this monster? Or how are you living this life you didn't want? I start to think about like, what if I leave and I'm wrong? So how do you deal with the fear of I'm making a big mistake by taking this big leap?
I'm literally in the middle of boxes right now. If you could see me, I have really messy hair. I'm in PJs and I'm surrounded by boxes because I'm currently getting rid of my apartment, putting what I little I do own into storage, and moving to Thailand in January. And I'm battling the what if this goes all wrong every single day, not only in my own head, but in texts from friends or from my family. Like, what are you going to do about life insurance? What are you going to do about this? Da, 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 da. Isn't it dangerous? All of these things. So, not only am I battling my own fears, but I'm battling input from other people. And I think I've heard, and I can't remember from where, that when other people are commenting on your journey, they're actually expressing their own fears. So, for example, my brother just texted me this morning. I love him dearly, but he says, "Well, what are you going to do about health insurance?" And my immediate reaction is like, "Oh, health insurance. Yeah, that's right. That's such a bad thing." But I take a moment and I think, actually, what Clay is asking is, what would I do if I were to travel about health insurance? And to really separate myself from what fears other people have and only carry the fears that I have makes it less of a burden. So I already have a plan. I had talked to a friend about what she did for health insurance while she was traveling abroad. And so I have a plan. So kind of separating other people's fears and expectations from your own can be helpful. And then, you know what? Sometimes when you're scared, I just heard Cheryl Strayed say this, the author of Wild. Sometimes when you're getting closer to your fears, you're getting closer to where you're supposed to be headed. And that also adds comfort to me. And you know what, Jen? If I sell all my stuff, I go to Thailand and I hate it, well, I will make enough money to buy a plane ticket and then come right back. And really, that's probably the worst that can happen. So also making sure you aren't really getting lost in all of these bad things that can happen. Just go to what's the worst that can happen and can I handle that? Yes, absolutely I can. And then you just got to take the leap.
Oh my God, I'm getting the chills. Every time you're saying this, I'm just like sitting here about to cry, about to want to. I wish I could hug you. I love it. And I admire you for doing this. And I want you to tell our listeners a list of cities you've lived in and also why you're deciding to go live in Thailand.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in Indiana, which I love and is darling. They will welcome you with open arms. I also lived on Sanibel Island, Florida, to be a landscaper for a while, which was really fun. And then I went to Chicago and I was there for 7 years. And then uh, technically lived in Fiji for 39 days while I was on Survivor. And after I got back from that show, I didn't know where I wanted to live. So I traveled around the US, took some time, and found Denver, Colorado, which is where I am now. I love Denver. I expect to come back here. I know you and your partner have lived here for a while as well.
Yes.
I would love to hear what you thought of it. I love Denver and really see myself coming back here. Why I chose Thailand was I have always wanted to go to Southeast Asia and started to look for hours and hours and hours at different yoga retreats. And I just felt like I'll know it when I see it. And I found a yoga retreat called Wonderland Healing Center. And when I saw it, I knew it. And so I booked a dorm room there. And that's where I'm headed first to do like a 3 week yoga intensive. And then I'm going to travel around and really start focusing on the self coach, which is my business.
I love it. And one of the questions that people have been talking about constantly in the You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group is just that the art of moving to new cities and making new friends and just feeling like you can build a life in these places. So, as someone like yourself who has lived in a couple of different places and now they're moving to a brand new country, what are some tips you have for first making new friends and building connections with people?
I think Hmm. My advice for building new connections and meeting new people is remembering that even if it looks like everyone else is totally sure of themselves and knows what's going on, every single person has a little bit of feeling or a lot of bit of feeling of what am I doing here? Do I fit in? Why does everyone else understand what's going on better than I do? And just to try and sit in that common feeling of, well, maybe they look more comfortable today, but they've been here for 3 days. So they used to be uncomfortable like me. And so thinking about how not everyone else has their stuff together. There's no way. Everyone is working on something, everyone is insecure about something. And so sometimes I do this little trick in my mind when I'm in a new city or something, which I look around and I try to kind of picture that someone else is newer there than I am. And so always approaching other people like, what are you looking for? How can I help you? I just got here to Thailand yesterday, but is there anything you need help with? And offering yourself will bring really lovely people into your life and give you a purpose. And then it also gives you the chance to build relationships that can help you with what you're working on or advice you need, etc. So I think starting in a place of giving instead of needing to receive is less anxiety inducing for me.
Absolutely. And when you go to these new cities or when you go to Thailand, what are some of the couple of the first things you do to make yourself feel at home? I know when Adam and I were living in a new city every month, we had our rituals. Like we would unpack that night, but then we would find like a pasta restaurant and we would do some of the same things every place we went to start to feel at home. So, do you have any of those rituals to start to make a place you've never been before or never lived before feel like it's a home for you?
I should take your advice and create these rituals. This sounds great. I think I could use a little bit of that. I do have a mala bead necklace that I made at a yoga retreat a long time ago. And I, even in preparation, I decided about 3 weeks ago officially I'm going to leave, and I've started wearing it more often. So wearing that around while I'm in these familiar places and feeling 100% myself, I feel like it's like collecting that energy. I don't know if your audience is frou frou as I am, but having that necklace with me at all times, I took it with me out on Survivor. I brought it with me all the time when I travel. reminds me that I'm at home. So I think having something that feels really comfortable, whether it's a bracelet that a friend wears for you at home or a necklace that you connect with, something that's small and can be on your body that really makes you feel like home is wherever you are. I do carry that necklace around with me in that way.
Oh, totally. It's like having that little sign of this is who I am, this is where I've come from. So I love that. And you mentioned Survivor. I have to ask you about that. Tell us what it was like being on the show. What were some of the things you absolutely were surprised to find out about being on the show that you loved, and what were some challenges that you had?
Sure. So, being on Survivor, for those who don't know what it is, quickly, it's a reality television show on an island. There are 20 people, and every 3 days, someone gets voted off the island, and the last person standing wins $1 million, in short. Um, some of the things I was surprised about was how kind of quickly I got used to not eating food. That you can sort of adapt to anything in any situation. Of course, it was extremely hard. We were eating about 200 calories a day. I lost rapid weight, but really that you can adapt to the situation and and how I felt when I was out there, even with barely any basic necessities, like barely clean water, a little bit of rice, that I was still so happy and I still had so much human connection. And there is not any money in the world that could buy the experience that me and my fellow castmates could have together. And I think it solidified, and those friends from the show still keep me honest, which is I can get into my career and worried about climbing the career ladder and all that stuff, but which I want to do. And I help people with career coaching. It's extremely important. But ultimately, that's not what is creating happiness for myself and in my life. So I loved how quickly I got used to not eating food and surprised how much it helped me realize what really contributes to happiness in life. And some of the challenges, I think, first of all, other than you living outside, sleeping on the ground, you're doing these physical challenges that are sort of like easy American Ninja Warrior courses, is what I would explain. Those were it was really challenging for me. And also thinking about, I knew I wasn't the most athletic person. I wasn't in great shape. And so, what's my body look like on television and being in my bra and underwear on national TV? That was definitely a challenge I had around accepting my body for what it is and being really proud of myself for getting through something super, super tough for 35 days, and trying to quell some of the insecurities I had.
Wow. And what made you want to try out for the show? Was there a moment, or did you just apply? Why did you decide you wanted to do this?
I've watched the show off and on for a really long time. It's been on since 2000 now. And I always really enjoyed the aspect of the show of people pushing themselves beyond anything we privileged folks have to push ourselves beyond. And also the social game of getting to know people. What would you do for $1 million? Can you push yourself to manipulate? Should you do that? It's just a lot of human questions, and it happens so rapidly. And I just wanted to see if I could do it. So I applied, I sent in a video, and just sat down, press record, told my story. I applied the first time right after I got married, and then applied again a year later after I'd gotten divorced. And I think the Survivor producers were like, if this girl is crazy enough to like get married and divorced in 6 months, she'll probably do some crazy stuff on TV. So I just went out there and did as good as I thought I ever could, did better than I thought I ever could, and am so, so thankful for the experience.
You mentioned a lot when you were describing the experience that it really taught you what happiness was and is. So, what would you say happiness is for you?
To me, happiness is when I have a day where I have more joy than worry.
Mm.
And I think I can tend to worry about things and be an anxious person. And I think when I do things like get divorced or move to Thailand I think other people look at me and think, oh my gosh, she must be fearless. How does she do this stuff? She must not get scared. And I think it's like that couldn't be further from the truth. I absolutely am a worrier. What happens? What if I get sick and I don't speak the language? What about my health insurance? What about this? What about that? What if my friends move on and forget I ever existed? All of the fears are going through my head. But I just really try to, every time that stuff comes up, think about the happiness and the joy that I can experience as I experience a different set of life circumstances. And no one else is going to create that for me. I have to create that for myself. So to me, and to sum that up, happiness is, yes, more moments of joy than worry in a day. And that can mean a million different things for a million different people. But I just don't want to be one of the people who sit in the worry and sit in the stress and don't make changes to reach more happiness in their day.
I love it. And your advice and your journey has been so inspirational. And I want to end this interview like I end them all. So I'm going to ask you one final question. Fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger. So,
If the thought has crossed your mind, just test it out to see what would happen if you say yes.
oh, I love it. I really wish that we were living in the same city and we could be friends because just listening to you, I'm like, this is the kind of person I want as a best friend. So I'm going to hit you up
Oh,
if I'm ever in Thailand. If you're ever in New York, hit me up. Kellen, it's been so wonderful having you on the show. Please tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and your coaching.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen. I love following your journey as well, and love supporting women. So thank you so much for supporting me in return. I can be found at The Self Coach on Instagram, and my website is www.theselfcoach.co. No M on purpose. And please follow along with my journey. I also help people with resume reviews, prepping their career for career negotiations, and advice on career consulting. So hit me up if you have any questions, and I hope to meet some of you in the virtual world.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. And I hope to follow every step of your journey as you move to another country. Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz. Thank you so much again for being on our show today.
Thanks, Jen. You take care.